Okay, this is our video for topic 3, the argument for colonialism. And what we want to discuss now is the difference between a controversy and bad academia, and why controversial things can be quite good.
Yeah.
And why bad academia is quite bad.
So I'm going to link it to our reading, and I will just call it the Gilly controversy. So Gilly, as we all know, wrote this article arguing for or in favor of colonialism, and he actually got a lot of critique for that, which is natural, I would say. And some of the critics were actually saying that the article should be retracted, rather instead of arguing against the article. So actually that's something we were critiquing. Like, in our opinion, you should, instead of trying to silence or make an article or an opinion go away, in academia, instead try to use debate to counter the arguments you don't agree with.
Yeah.
And
Because actually a main advantage of something that's controversial is that it can open up a space for debate. So that's why there's a difference between like the problem in Gilly's article being something that's controversial and opening up a space for debate, and the fact that actually his article, quite a lot of it was quite poorly academically written, and we just thought like 2 examples of this amongst others were that he doesn't address anybody else's arguments against colonialism. So he makes quite blanket statements about how colonialism is presented as this evil, terrible thing, but he doesn't actually address anyone directly, and like kind of use it as a space for debate, which is problematic. And then he also critiques the ways that Chinua Achebe's texts have been interpreted by others, and reinterprets these. But there's like later on discussion over how he's interpreted these. And so it's like a bad methodology because it's not that clear, like the distinction of like it's like difficult to use these as fact. And that's like open for discussion.
Yeah, like actually when I started to read the article, I was a bit disappointed because when I read Gilly is arguing in favor of colonialism, that's controversial. But I would expect somebody in academia, if they present a controversial theory, that they would really have a good argument to back it up, and then you could argue against that. But in my opinion, because of what you said, this whole cherry picking thing, not addressing certain things that Gilly did, it's actually just really bad academia.
Yeah, it's quite a shame it didn't open up a space for debate and for us to maybe consider things differently, or have the potential of making us consider things differently.
Yeah.
So that is quite disappointing.
Yeah, so you were just reading it and not... it was not very well argued, we would say.
Yeah.
So that was a bit disappointing. But there is, of course, a general question if there's something as ethicality in academia, is there such a thing? Are there things that should not be said for ethical reasons, not because they are researched in a bad way? I mean, of course, we would agree if you don't do a good research, it shouldn't be published, or you should do another research or something. But are there things that can't be said? And as we said, we think it's more powerful to counter argue than to just make the opinions you don't like to go away. And we have 2 examples we found out where we were seeing a controversy and people tried to silence it, and we just wanted to present it. Yeah.
So the first one is one around Ilan Pape, where he supported one of his master's students called Teddy Katz, whose thesis they originally got the highest honours, so for good academia, like good academic practice. And in his thesis, he suggested that there'd been an Israeli massacre in a village called Tantura in 1948, and he'd based his thesis in some interviews that he'd carried out. But then later on, it was disputed whether what he'd discussed had actually happened, and he was sued for libel by those who'd been in the military group who were alleged to have carried out the massacre. So then he was failed for his thesis, and it was excluded from academia, and it still couldn't, he's still supported by Ilan Pape now, in that Pape thought it was a good thesis and it was good academia, and that it should have been published. But the problem here is that something controversial was presented, and then he was silenced for it. And it would have been more effective if it could have been something that would have been discussed afterwards, and others could have shared their viewpoints on it, instead of just silencing it and saying this didn't happen. There was the space for debate which could have been opened, wasn't, and so there's just one viewpoint on this matter that's prevailed, that the massacre didn't happen. But it's quite important that things like this are discussed in academia.
Yeah, and also this example, I think from a left or more left point of view, everybody would agree that this is a good controversy, this should be something that's allowed to say, and it should be discussed. Mm-hmm. So I have another example where, from a more left point of view, you could say that it's not good ethically. So it's about my economics professor in a university, and he is a respected professor, just normal professor. The problem with him was, or if you want to call it a problem, he founded the party which is now or has now become the far-right party. And when I talked to students about it and they found out that I was in his class, they wanted me to boycott his class. I didn't see a reason because, first of all, he didn't talk about politics in his class. Second of all, he had legitimate points. He was a respected professor with, So he was very well, he was just doing his job as a professor. He was leaving out the political aspect. Mm-hmm. But people kind of condemned me for still going to his classes. So in this case, this would be where people try to silence kind of a view that they don't like to hear. And you could consider this as a bad controversy. So... but in our opinion, is a danger of silencing opinions.
So in both of these, there's a dominant group who has said this person, we shouldn't listen to this person, we don't agree with this viewpoint. Yeah. And it's been ignored
and silenced.
Rather than used as an opportunity to open up a discussion and for multiple viewpoints to exist.
Yeah, exactly. For example, this professor I talked about, he was saying from an economic point of view, Greece should leave the euro. And from there, you can discuss it on an academic level. You can bring arguments against that if you're against that. Mm-hmm. So, and that would be on an academic level. So, we think, and then if you find good counter arguments, it's also more powerful. Than just saying go away. I don't agree.
It would make you a better academic to be able to look at someone else's argument and criticize it and discuss it in an academic way rather than silencing them. Yeah.
Yeah, and the counter argument again for that would be not being critical of badly researched articles or bad academia if it represents your view. And we found an example in the problem with Barisco, because he was, as we said, basically agreeing with Said, but very critical of his methods. So he was criticizing the academia, kind of, that Said did. And for that, he was harshly criticized, because many agreed with the view of Said, even though maybe his scientific work or his academic work wasn't as good. And then if you criticize that, you get harshly critiqued. So that's also a problem. So either way, you should be critical, we think, of good or bad academia. Like you just should consider that. Yeah, and if it's controversial, we should rather see it as a challenge, also to improve our own argument.
Yeah. And it's really...
And finding new arguments.
Yeah, there's something important in like opening up a space for debate and discussion and new ideas and new arguments. And if people are worried about, or if controversial views are silenced and make an academic a bad academic, then like you risk missing out on people maybe making controversial claims that would open up new viewpoints and ideas and discussions and debates. So it's something quite important. So I'm going to summarize what we've said. That we think controversies are important because of this opening up debate and introducing new ideas. But it's really important to remember that bad academia, like bad academic technique or like practice shouldn't be considered in academia, and that we need to consider, even if there's a view, like the difference between a viewpoint that you disagree with and bad academic practice, and that if there is a viewpoint that you agree with, there can still be bad academic practice there too. Yeah.
So yeah,
That's it.
thanks for watching the video.